Hello everyone, good morning, good evening. Welcome to 30th PMI PMP Q&A session. Our today's topic is relatively easier and it is knowledge transfer. So let me just share my screen and then we will start. First question, let's start. All right, Rahul, you have chosen option B.
Yeah, I mean, this question looks familiar. I've read this before. So I think the best option is kind of like, you do KT sessions rather than, documenting or any other stuff. I think these work best. I remember this was the correct option at that time. So
All right. Okay. Alan, you have chosen option C.
Oh, not is the correct one. So, being honest, I was looking for lesson learn, but develop a compressive break report sounds for me like the better one because they're gonna catch all the information in one side and they can leave it for following projects. So, yeah, for me, it's the one.
Right. Thank you. Right. Francis, you have chosen option C.
Yes, I've chosen option B because C, I mean, because I think for me the caching word was the most effective approach to capture the noise and ensure accessibility for the future project. I think the other option is just like they present the idea of sharing while actually doing the project. So if you need something which you can refer to afterwards for the future project, I think the C stand out as a better answer out there.
All right. So, Francis, what's wrong with other options? Let's use the elimination technique.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So yes. Number one is to encourage team members to document their earnings individually and submit them to the project manager. So you are submitting like individually to a project manager. So how do you refer this one for the future projects? Once you put all the findings you submit all the findings to the project manager. I think it doesn't make sense to me in a way that you can refer that for the future findings or the future learning.
Mhm.
Number B, organize a knowledge sharing session where the team members present their findings to a broader audience. So basically, you're presenting your findings, but at the same time, you're presenting your findings, but there's no a way where you're going to share this for the future. I don't know. You need a record where you can record all the findings, whereby you can keep them and refer them for the future project. So after you have presented these findings, based on what I understand for B, I don't know if there's a way of going back without a kept record. So number D, you try the collaborative platform for the team members to document and share project knowledge throughout the life cycle. So this is during the project, not after. So this is how I understood the option D.
All right. Thank you. So you removed option D because you think it's a continuous thing, right?
Yes, consider within yes, for the project, not after the project.
All right. But where it is written, like you always capture lessons learned after the project. It's written the project team has accumulated valuable knowledge throughout the project lifecycle, including new research technique and best practices. What is the most effective approach to capture the knowledge? So it doesn't say at the end of the project, right?
But it's said to capture the knowledge to ensure accessibility for the future projects.
Yeah. But it doesn't mean like you're capturing at the end only. You can capture throughout the project lifecycle. That could be used later on. Does it make sense?
Yes. Yeah, it does make sense.
All right. But good try. Thank you for explaining all the options in detail. All right, Richard, you have chosen option D.
Well, I thought I was wrong, but you gave me a little bit of hope because when I first read the
You
question
were
and I read
wrong.
it
I would have started with you. Remember?
again, because I read the question again and I got hung up saying like Francis did, where it's like I thought that throughout the project team, throughout the project manager is nearing the completion of a successful medical project. But then I read the second. What I was looking for out of the answers basically was look, I was looking for something that was collaborative, something that would capture lessons learned, and I thought that throughout the life cycle was going to bite me.
Yeah,
But then when you went back through and read the question again, this it was asking for this project as a whole would have
yeah,
been a best way to capture. So that's why I kind of landed on option D.
absolutely. That is correct. Knowledge transfer or knowledge sharing is an ongoing activity, right? It's not like that we capture knowledge at specific moments, right? It's an ongoing activity. So preferred style or form should be to have a platform, digital platform or something where people can capture these learnings throughout the product lifecycle rather than having a dedicated one session or two sessions, right? We should have a platform where people can interact and share their learnings. And remember, we had a similar question in previous sessions. Whenever we have large teams, whenever teams are spread. So rather than having face-to-face conversation, we go for online platforms, right? Where they can access the platform without having the need of all team members together, right? So this is not a one-time activity. So that's why correct answer is option D. All other options are incorrect. So encourage team members to document their learning individually and submit them to the project manager. No, so it lacks collaboration. Organize a knowledge sharing session where team members present their findings. So this is a one-time activity. Lessons learned documentation is not one-time activity. Develop a comprehensive project report with a dedicated section capturing key learnings. So we conduct those sessions or we capture learnings and then part of those learnings are added in the report. That is the later part. So first you need to document the data. So option C is incorrect. The correct answer is option D. Let's read the explanation. Okay, one thing. Uh, don't get confused when you have two options. One option is face-to-face communication, right? Second is online digital platform. So one of the agile principles is the preferred form of communication is face-to-face. But suppose if your teams are remotely located, then face-to-face is not the right answer. So it's not always like always face-to-face conversation is the right answer, right? And one dedicated session to document lesson learned is not enough, even if it is face to face. You understand? So just don't go for it because it is face to face. Look for the requirement. What is the requirement and what is the best approach to fulfill that requirement? All right, let's move to the next question. All right, so you won't be able to answer this question if you haven't read, okay? So you have to go through the content, whether it is notes, whether these are uh, PowerPoints, whether it is book, whether it is session, whatever. You have to use some resources to get understanding of such question. You expect such question in the exam, right? So if you haven't read, you won't be able to answer. And this is what I'm seeing here. Okay. So Francis, you have chosen option B. Why? You are on mute.
Yes. I've chosen option A. I was leaning towards A and C, but I chose option A because we are talking about artifact modification within the project. So basically, it's part of the project management plan. I'm not sure, but that's my choice.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Mudit, you have chosen option D.
Yes, I was thinking this is a part because these are all the artifacts which are all the framework for the artifacts. So this might be related to the governance plan. I was not very sure about this. I was a little confused between A and D. So I
All
chose
right.
D based upon the governance.
Thank you. Marta, you have chosen option D.
Yeah, but I was really making reference to the project artifacts that are systematically monitored and controlled, which would go back to a governance plan. That's why I picked option D.
All right. All right. Thank you. Okay. Mohan, you have chosen option A.
Yeah, I picked option A. I eliminated B, C, and D. I mean, B is obviously a change management plan, which deals with how changes coming in, how you're going to manage those changes, right? So that doesn't fit in this, especially because of we were talking about the outputs, project artifacts of the outputs, and how they'll be monitored, controlled. Lessons learned repository is this is not going to fit that, and governance plan is basically decision making plan. So I forget what what configuration management plan is. So I picked the only option which I didn't know. You know.
So elimination techniques may work for you, but let's see. Okay, Mary, you have chosen option B.
Yes, frank to say, I would I wasn't sure between A and B change because it's a change management plan, because to ensure that any modification to the project, because of the modifications to the project artifacts and systematically monitored and controls, because of the word modifications actually.
You saw
And
word
track
change
the
or
current status,
modification?
but I would prefer a better explanation on configuration. I was reading the book and so on, but maybe I wasn't taking so much care of this part for the configuration management plan.
All right. So change management is making changes to project scope and product scope. If you're making changes to features of the product, that is called change management. You're adding scope. As a result of that, there is a change in schedule, there is a change in cost. You're updating schedule baseline, you're updating cost baseline, you're updating scope baseline, you're updating other plans. That's what is done through change management. But whenever there is a change to the document, right, and an artifact, that is called configuration management. So configuration management is updating documents. So as a result of any change in the scope, you need to update other documents. That is called configuration management. So for example, version controlling. So one of the section under configuration management is making sure that all the relevant stakeholders, they have the right version. So version controlling is one of the components of configuration management. So whenever you make a change to the artifact or document, that is called configuration management. So question is pretty straightforward. A PM is setting up a framework to ensure that any modification to project documents or artifacts are systematically monitored and controlled. And this is done by configuration management to make sure that all the team members, they have the right versions of document so that nobody is working on old documents. Okay, so correct answer is option A. Let's read the explanation. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, Marta, you have chosen option A.
I chose option A because I thought explicit would be the adequate definition for sharing beliefs and personal experience and insights.
All right, so you think beliefs and personal experiences and insights, it's an explicit knowledge. So
Yeah.
this is the type of knowledge that is explicit. Okay, right. Alan, you have chosen option A.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Explicit is like something that you can express when you have the chance to share your knowledge. So
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Francis, you have chosen option D. You're on mute again.
Oh yes. So I've chosen option B because oh, okay. Oh, I thought I chose option C. Okay.
You have chosen option C.
No, I'll choose the option D actually.
Mm-hmm.
I chose option D because the hidden knowledge, I think, is that kind of knowledge where people have and they're not willing to share with their coworkers because of some other reasons. Um, Probably because they think if they share much, some other coworkers may depend on them. That's why
Why
I
people
chose.
don't share that knowledge?
Yeah, sometimes people think like if they share the knowledge, then people may depend
Misread.
on them. So yeah, they may ask like you have to keep actually sharing with your coworkers, or if they need help, you have to, because they know probably you know more, so you have to tell them.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Emma, you have chosen option C.
Yes, because the two that I eliminated out was B and D because I've never heard of them. I know what explicit knowledge is, which is the process. Where you're following something like a formal procedure manual.
Mm-hmm.
And for C, it's more like your experience. Based on your, like my father, he knows how to, like just the other day, I wanted to lawn, but he wanted to do it his way. So based on his knowledge of doing it for how many years, he thinks he's better than I am. So anyway, he got the job done. So yeah,
Correct.
experience.
So we divide, thank you. So we divide knowledge into two types: explicit knowledge and tacit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is a knowledge that can easily be codified and written. Codified or written. A process, a workflow, a step, a methodology, right? Tacit means unspoken. Something which is difficult to codify, right? You can write, but the intent and that intuition, it is difficult to codify. It's the experience that a person, possesses. So beliefs, experiences, and insights are unspoken, tacit knowledge, which is difficult to completely document. So correct answer is option C, right? B and D are just made up terms. They are not relevant. Knowledge is divided into two categories, explicit and tacit. Explicit is processes and tools, techniques, frameworks which are easily codified, and tacit is unspoken. Correct answer is option C. Let's read the explanation. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, Anton, you have chosen option A.
I guess, yeah, I believe when less experienced person is paired with more experience to learn from it, it's called job shadowing. But if it's vice versa, and less experienced one is tasked to to lead, and like more experience providing his back and like guiding him, is called reverse shadowing.
All right, isn't it expert novice pairing, Anton?
Sorry?
Isn't it option D? What's wrong with option D?
I've never heard about that, to be honest.
Okay, but conceptually, if we see an expert and novice, they're working together, isn't it expert novice pairing? Even if you haven't heard the term, but from...
Is it not the same as job shadowing though?
Okay, so what is job shadowing?
Job shadow, when it is indeed the less experienced person is following the more experienced one.
Yeah, so that is job shadowing. When less experienced person shadows the experienced person to learn, that is called job shadowing. Expert novice pairing, it's the right terminology, it's the correct terminology, but it's a pairing, but it doesn't mean how they share knowledge with each other, right? They can share knowledge in different ways, right? Maybe an expert can guide a novice can shadow, but it does not reflect the actual scenario which is presented in the question. You understand? So it's the right term, but it's not according to the situation which is presented in the question. Okay, right. Good try. So let me take one more comment. Manmeet, you have chosen option B.
Yes. Job shadowing is what I have recently done as I joined the new company. So pretty much it's the same thing that is mentioned in the question. Like more experienced team members actually do their own stuff, and non-experienced or no-wise people just sit next to them, observe, ask questions, share knowledge. And when asked, they just give feedbacks that yeah, we understood, or no, we don't understand. So yeah, that's what I thought.
But if you read the question, what does it say? It says a learning strategy where less experienced team members lead project tasks while more experienced team members observe. Isn't it exactly opposite what you have just explained?
My God, I did not read that carefully then.
All right. Correct
Sorry.
answer is reverse shadowing, right? As Anton mentioned. When less experienced team members, they work, experienced team members monitor and intervene whenever intervention is needed or whenever guidance is needed. That is called reverse shadowing. Job shadowing, reverse shadowing, these are two ways of sharing knowledge. Peer pairing, expert novice pairing, these are also ways, but these are generic terms just to pair people together and they learn from each other, right? Through different means. But according to the situation, correct answer is option A, right? Let's read the explanation. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, Marta, you have chosen option D.
I chose option D because, first of all, it's a team that is geographically dispersed. So mobile application would be very would be feasible. And then the other portion of it is that the objective is to enhance project visibility and stakeholder engagement, so that where the project documents and task updates would be added and everybody would have access to it through the mobile. That was my thought process.
All right, so it's like you have an application where documents are there and you can access them at any point in time, right?
Correct.
Okay. So what's wrong with option A, a robust document management system with version control capabilities? It's the same thing, no?
No, I don't see it as the same thing because what we're aiming to is to enhance project visibility. And I don't think that they're aiming for a robust document management system.
All right.
It's more like an updated version for those that are engaged in the project.
Yeah, you're right. But it says a robust document management system means you're managing documents, and same is the thing you are doing with D. But it makes sense. You're saying D is more like sharing data or document. A is more like documenting or archiving, right? Okay.
Correct.
All right.
Correct.
Right. Good. Okay. Mohan, you have chosen, sorry, Garvita, you have chosen option B.
Yeah, I was little confused between B and C, and I prefer to go for A because it kind of increases interaction through the communication platform, so thus giving opportunities for better stakeholder engagement. Though I was more, I mean, I don't know, between B and C, I was very confused.
All right, so you were confused between B and C. Then
Yeah,
you thought
because
it
it
should be
said,
A, but ultimately
yeah,
you will be picking D, right?
no, B or C. I mean, I'm still not sure because in C it says advanced reporting suite with customizable dashboards and drill down capabilities. So I mean, it doesn't speak about the engagement part. It do speaks about the project visibility, but engagement is missing. And in B, it talks about interactive communication platforms, so a lot of visibility, so you can share your knowledge and everything. Uh, so yeah, and I gave preference to my understanding regarding stakeholder engagement, and I chose option B.
All right. Thank you. Richard, you have chosen option C.
So as I read the question, they were looking for a project management information system for a team that was dispersed. And the primary goal is to enhance the project's variability, visibility, and stakeholders to engage with the project. I landed on option C. I too was between B and C. I thought B might have been a hang up for me because it wasn't, I mean, it was asking for engagement, but it wasn't solving the problem of visibility. And I felt that C, with the dashboards that could at a glance tell you everything you need to know about the project, and a stakeholder could engage with this project through those dashboards and easily get a snapshot view of where the project is in real time, as long as it's updated well. Drill down capabilities, that might bite me because I wasn't exactly sure what that is, but I just kind of ruled out A and D. The mobile app was fine, but I mean that's like a nice thing, but it really was like to access project documents, but you got to kind of dig through that stuff. Whereas this option C gave the best shot to see all the information you need to know at a glimpse, and you don't have to dig through documents. You don't have to know what you're trying to look for. You could just bring it up, see where you're at, see where your work in progress and all that is, see who stakeholders are involved, and it's just all right there. So that's why I landed on C.
All right. Thank you for detailed explanation. All right, Mohan, you have chosen option C. Sorry, B.
Yeah, I chose C, but then I chose B. Um, and I eliminated A and D. But between B and C, I first chose C because it was, I think somebody mentioned this, but this is a advanced reporting suite with customizable dashboards and drill down capabilities. It does engage with this stakeholders, but I'm assuming that it was not that it doesn't cover the aspect of providing the project visibility. So that's why I kind of then went to B, which is more a dual purpose, where it has the visibility as well as the engagement with the various chat functionalities, etc.
But Mohan, option B doesn't talk about visibility at all. It's just a communication channel, right? You can communicate.
Right. And I thought, I mean, I guess you mentioned that not to assume, right? I mean, this thing I kind of assumed that with the functionality of chat, there is that intrinsic function or intrinsic aspect of visibility, because obviously now there are more people who are actually engaging.
For example, right now we have Zoom chat, so it doesn't mean it talks about project visibility. All right, good explanation. I would go with Richard explanation, and that is the correct explanation. Option B looks good, but it's not solving the problem. Having a communication channel would not give you visibility. And without having visibility, there is no point of having a communication channel. So option B does not solve the problem. Option C solves the problem. Once you have the visibility, then you would go for the engagement part. So visibility would come through a reporting infrastructure, dashboard, or anything, any platform, right? So you need to address the problem. Once the problem is addressed, once you have data, once you have information about project status, only then you would be able to engage with the stakeholders. If you don't know what's happening, what's the point of having a communication channel? What would you be communicating? Even if the functionality is real-time chat. What you will be communicating on real-time chat? You will be asking for the status. You will be asking for the data, but that is not there. Correct answer is option C because it addresses the problem, right? So let's read the explanation. All right. Let's move to the next question. All right, Mohan, you have chosen option A.
Yeah, I think, the most appropriate next step, right, is once you have the learn register, B talks about archiving it for further reference by the project teams. I mean, that's not I assume that's not the right step. Integrating the register's content into the project closure report without further action, that doesn't seem to be right as well. And transfer the key learnings from the register to organizations. Lesson learned. Oh, I'm assuming OPA. I mean, A seems to be the most appropriate thing to do because it's being reviewed by the senior management. Because there could be additional lessons learned from that aspect as well. So, and then incorporate into the OPA, into the organizational process.
All right. And Mohan, have you done that ever? Like your senior management reviews the lessons learned register?
We have honestly never done lessons learned register in any project, but I think from a functional or a senior management review, I think there are some lessons learned, right? That aspect needs to be captured. Again, this is purely from practical aspect of it. So I don't know.
All right. That's a different thing, Mohan. That's you're saying collecting lessons learned from senior management, right? That's a different thing. We can involve them in those lessons learned gathering sessions. We can talk to them, we can interview them. So there are different ways of collecting lessons, right? We're talking about like you have documented lesson learned, what's the next step for the project manager regarding lessons learned register, what you would be doing with that lesson learned register. You have documented everything, what you will be doing next, right? So that step has already been done, right? When you say you have gathered lesson learned, it means you have gathered from all the stakeholders, right? So that step has already been done. The question talks about something different. I'll explain that. Okay. Alan, you have chosen option D.
Yeah, for the in this case, they would to collect all the information on one side. So once they gather all the information, they can put it together in the lesson learned repository. repository. Sorry.
So what would happen if they put together and put them in the repository?
Oh, after they can use it for following projects and keep the information open for someone else that is in the same condition or same situation, and they can use that information as support.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Right. Mudit, you have chosen option D.
This is not the only project team that they have. There might be other teams as well who would be working on similar projects. So these lessons learned, if they go into a repository, can be helpful for those teams to replicate and to not make the mistakes or use their lessons, as well as the other. For example, C gets eliminated because there is no action. So these lessons learned go nowhere. And in B, if it is only for this project team, then it will not be used for the other projects and it will be only limited. And A, I don't think the senior management would look into the lessons learned. They have a bigger area of work to do. So B is the most optimum.
That's correct, right? So you can eliminate B, C, and A. That's not the senior management job to review the lessons learned register, right? That is done by the team. And in order to capture lessons learned from senior management, there are different ways we can invite them in those lessons learned documentation sessions. We can have interview, we can have chat. That's a different thing, right? So correct answer is option D. We have lessons learned register, right? When lesson learned register is completed, it becomes part of lessons learned repository. Lessons learned repository is a store of all the lessons learned of previous projects. So we make lessons learned register as part of lessons learned repository. That's the next step that we do. So correct answer is option D. Let's read the explanation. All right, next question. All right. I was expecting this is the most easiest question because we have discussed this and I have already answered this, right? I think we have discussed. Okay. So, Mary, you have chosen option D. Why?
Well, I guess you mentioned, as you said, continuously through the project. So I guess throughout is other word.
Right. Emma, you have chosen option D.
Yes, because you kept on saying throughout the project. So I think we could learn throughout the project. I did think about B as well at the end of each project phase, but it only said only. So that's why I went to D. And A, it also said completion of one or more milestones only. Again, the word only threw me off. So I said D.
All right. Thank you. Manmeet, you have chosen option B.
I picked option B because after completion of one or more milestones, I think it's gonna be super quick to update the register. updating the lesson learned register. End of the project will be too late. Throughout the project is more of like, I think, agile process. That's why I eliminated A, C, D, and picked B.
All right. So see, for example, you have learned a lesson today, right? You're doing something, you have learned a lesson today. You won't be waiting for completion of the phase or completion of the project or completion of the milestone. Otherwise, you will forget that, right? So you want to document that there whenever there is a learning to actually capture each and everything. Otherwise, you won't be having time, you won't be remembering that, it would be difficult to recall. So whenever there is a lesson learned, whether in Agile or Waterfall, you document that. And this is what we discussed in the previous question as well, right? Just do it throughout the project. So the best time to capture lesson learned is throughout the project. If you just remove word only from first three options, as Emma mentioned, all options are correct. So yes, we do capture lessons learned at the completion of the project, right? We have final lesson learned session at the end of the session where we invite all relevant stakeholders. At the end of each project phase only, yes, we do that. At the end of each phase, we conduct a session. At the end of the project only, yes, we do that. And throughout the project, that is the right answer. Only word is problematic. And if you recall, we did a similar question. And the question was like, you want to invite Scrum Master and team for the stakeholder for the lesson learned session, what you would be doing. And you would be invite them as a mandatory participants, as an optional participants, you would be requesting them? No, you would be inviting them as a mandatory participants at the end of the project because you invite all relevant stakeholders at the end of the project to capture lessons learned. So we do capture lessons learned at the end of the project to make sure that nothing is missed. Correct answer is option D. Let's read the explanation.
Amar, I think what threw me off in that question is that at the beginning it says that a project manager. It doesn't say that I'm the project manager, and then it says like what should be done, not because he is the project manager is recommending a specific timing. So that kind of threw me for a loop and really made me kind of mill over because all the answers are correct. Like, yes, you want to do it at the end of the project, you want to do it at the end of the phase. So I think that just kind of threw me for a loop reading that question. But
all right, let's read it again. It says in the context of waterfall project management, a project manager recommends a specific timing for updating the lessons learned register to ensure comprehensive capture. Okay. Then the next part of question is asking you, when should the lessons learned register be updated, regardless of the fact whatever PM is recommending? So question is simple. Question is, when should the lessons learned register be updated to best adhere to good practices? So according to good practices, when we should do that, regardless of the fact whatever somebody is recommending. So you'll see such scenarios in the exam. A team member is recommending something. As a PM, what you should recommend. A project manager is doing something. What should be done? What could have been done differently? Right? So if somebody is doing that, it doesn't mean that is correct. So we're talking about best practices or good practices. So according to good practices, lessons learned should be documented throughout the project. I hope it is clear. Let's move to the next question. All right, Marta, you have chosen option B.
I chose option B because I thought that the senior developer could deliver formal presentation to the other more junior staff, and that would also make him speak up and you know make him leave that solo work that that he mentions above.
Right. And I think we did 3-4 questions on this. There was, I think, I couldn't recall the topic. I think it was emotional intelligence or something like that, or types of personalities. We did that. Almost similar question. I'll answer that. Okay, right. Good try. Okay, Mohan, you have chosen option D.
Oh man, I thought I had this one right. I think I eliminated B and C, and they were not very effective, right? So between A and B, A says basically schedule one-on-one meeting for the senior developer to mentor each team member, which is very broad. I mean, mentoring not necessarily for that domain knowledge which they're looking to transfer, right? So D was the best, where you have pair programming sessions with you basically team up the more experienced one with the less experienced team members.
All right. Thank you. Okay, Amanullah, you have chosen option B.
Yeah, for me, since the new senior development developer is actually more experienced and there are more staff, the way that to transfer that knowledge would be to organize knowledge sharing workshops or workshop, so to present that to other colleagues so that they learn from that as well.
All right. So knowledge sharing workshop where the senior developer delivers a formal presentation. Okay. So you say presentation is a good form of knowledge transfer. One-on-one is broad.
It's one way of the knowledge transfer where so many people can learn at the same time, while there are other options as well. But that's, in my opinion, in this list, that comes first.
All right. Richard, you have chosen option D. Richard and Mohan, are you sitting together?
Maybe, because Mohan, I'm picking up what Mohan's putting down. Him and I on the same way.
Exactly same answers almost in all. Maybe you discuss with each other. Okay, Mohan, what should I write? B? Okay, yes. Let's go.
No, so so as I read this question, so we have an introverted programmer that likes solo work, does not like talking in front of people. That automatically ruled out B. I'm not going to put him in front of a bunch of people and it's like you're making him do it. And that was the same thing where I had I cross out A also, because it's like I am not involving his input and I'm not taking him into consideration. I could ask him to develop a comprehensive knowledge base, but that takes time away from the project. I need him working on the project. So that's why I kind of landed on answer D. It encourages him. We're not telling him, we're like, look, we're going to put this pair programming sessions in order. We would really like you to be a part of them because you have a lot of knowledge. You can really help these guys. We can just do it one-on-one. You can still continue your work, and then these guys can glean a little bit of information off you. So that's kind of where I landed on D. I felt that answer really took into consideration who the developer was and tried to find a creative way to almost break his introverted nature by not making him
so partially correct answer. So you have pointed out rightly, like we won't be putting him in a situation where the person feels uncomfortable. So it's clearly written. The person is introverted and prefers written communication. and solo work. Person prefers written communication and solo work. When I read this question now again, I was like, how I added word written in the statement. This makes the answer so obvious, but maybe most of you have missed it. If somebody who's a trainer, instructor, or somebody who owns the knowledge, they prefer written communication, then why we want to do something different, right? And many team members, they lack skill set and they are eager to learn. So there are many, so it's not easy to have pair programming session with all of them, right? It's not feasible. And pair programming has specific context. It's somebody's writing a code and other person is reviewing the code. That requires a lot of time, right? So it's not feasible here. Correct answer is develop a comprehensive knowledge base with detailed documentation authored by the senior developer. If you recall, we did similar question during the communication. When somebody, they don't like to be in the meeting. So what was the right answer? Give them meeting agenda points or ask them to write something. You understand? To write something and then present it in the meeting. So writing is not a bad thing, especially for introverts people. And it's clearly written. Person prefers written communication and solo work. If somebody prefers that, why we want to do things in a different manner? We should do the way people want. Let's read the explanation. All right, might not be scalable. So face-to-face meetings are good, but we need to consider the situation, right? They're not always the right option. So correct answer is option C. Let's move to the next question.
And zoom in.
All right. Marta, you have chosen option A.
Yes, I chose option A by eliminating the others. It says viewing it as they think it's time consuming and unnecessary task, right? So if I offer extra time off as a reward, I don't think that would be something that they would want. I don't see it as a benefit, right? Then explaining benefits of documenting lessons learned for future projects. That must be something that the project management has been explaining, right? So explaining it again and again, sometimes people just don't capture some of the messages. And then implement a mandatory post-project survey. I thought that was very harsh on them, and that's why I picked option A. It would be more feasible to schedule, some brainstorming sessions and be more bringing them in to understand the importance of capturing and documenting the lessons learned. That's why I chose option A.
Right. So you're saying option A is right because it's more like explaining them the importance of documenting lessons, right?
Correct. Bringing them in and making them understand.
Making them understand. So don't you think the C is exactly the same thing?
No, because explaining the benefits is something that on an ongoing basis, the project manager is always saying that, right? If I say it's dedicated, it's something that I put on the slot so that they can pay attention and understand that that dedicated brainstorming is for them to understand. I don't think C is the same as A.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Anton, you have chosen option D. Thank you, Marta.
Yeah, I picked up D, again, using some elimination technique. I think, unlike Marta, A might be too strict, like, and having them, keeping them on schedule to provide feedback every week. Maybe that's a little too tough. Obviously, nobody's going to give extra time off as a reward. And explain the benefits of documenting lessons. Well, I think project manager tried that already. So that's why I thought, oh, okay, if we cannot do it during the project period, why not like doing it mandatory at the end of it? And this is something they wouldn't be able to escape.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Richard, you have chosen option B. Let me just see Mohan's answer. Where is Mohan? Okay, Richard, go ahead.
All right. So, much like everything else, so the first thing says it's a fast-paced marketing campaign with a tight deadline. So we're up against the wall. So I kind of looked at these and I was at, if you the team is highly skilled, right? Yeah, but they often skip the documenting lessons learned. And the question is asking, how can the project manager most effectively encourage the team to prioritize documenting throughout the project's life cycle? I figured scheduling a brainstorming session, I thought about that, but like I said, each week you're up against a deadline. And that just kind of proves their point where this is just kind of a waste of time because we're up against a deadline and you're taking an hour out of every week when we could be doing work. I looked at C. You've already explained it to them. They know it. They know what the deal is. They're highly skilled. They've been in this. They know what the benefits of lesson learned is, but they're skipping it anyway. You've said that we should be documenting our lessons learned throughout a project because you could run into something and then forget about the next day, and you're trying to hold on to that information to the very end of a project. You have no idea. That's why I mean, rolling those three things out, I sat on option B because I could give look, guys, if you just take 15 minutes and document whatever you find, just write it down, get it to me. By the time the end of the project, we hit our deadline, you guys will get an extra week off. I thought that would be a way to kind of incentivize them. Like I said, encourage them to prioritize it. I don't know, out of all the other options, like I said, that's just kind of how I came up with option B. I thought as a reward-based system to try to get them to as an incentive rather than just trying to force them into doing it.
All right. Great explanation. Richard, one question. On which basis you assumed like project manager has already explained the benefits and team already they're aware of it?
So it just says that the team's highly skilled.
Yeah.
So they're good at what they're doing. I'm assuming it's not their first rodeo.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like they've done this before, so they've already known that the benefits of having lessons learned because they've had to learn from lessons learned in the past. I mean, if they work well together and they're up against a deadline, that's kind of I'm just reading into the question too much. But that's like I said, that that's why I kind of got away from the explanation, because I already felt that they 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 already know that they're just working up against a deadline, and that's why they're trying to trim the fat and just move on.
But Richard, it's clearly written. They're highly skilled, but skip documenting lessons learned, viewing it as a time-consuming and unnecessary task. Their perception is it's useless task. So it's not like that they're highly skilled and they're aware of the benefits. They're saying it's useless, it's unnecessary, it's time-consuming. You understand that?
Mm-hmm.
The team's perception is that documenting lessons learned is not a fruitful activity. So what PM should do if team has such opinion? That is the question. Now, do you think like your answer should be different if you look at the question this way? Like if your team thinks this activity is not fruitful, so what you would be doing? The problem is not that team members are not motivated, they don't have time, or the problem is that they see an activity fruitless. They don't see any value, right? So option A, schedule dedicated brainstorming session at the end of each week. It's strict. They don't have enough time to do that, right? Option B, offer team members extra time off as a reward for diligently documenting. So reward is
It
not a
gives value.
Mhm.
Saying it's time off's valuable. I'm sorry, I'll shut up.
Okay, I'll take one more comment. Jacob, you have chosen option C.
Yeah, so I'm reading at it, reading the question. Yeah, there's nowhere where it says that they already been told about, documenting. So in order for to encourage someone, you want to explain or communicate properly with them. And so that's why I was thinking that's the best option. You want to communicate the importance of writing these down for future, how it will be a benefit for the project altogether.
Absolutely correct. When stakeholders are not aware of any aspects of the project, the best option is mentor them. The only option that is mentoring and coaching, option C, explain the benefits of documenting lessons learned for future projects and the organization's success. You'll see a lot of question in the exam in which you have to mentor, you have to coach, you have to explain. So do not ignore this option. All other options some are strict, some are just imposing something on them, right? And some are focusing on extrinsic reward rather than intrinsic motivation, where they understand the value and they do things themselves, right? So they are highly skilled people. They're not just ordinary or beginners where you impose things on them. They're highly skilled. You need to tell them the importance of the lessons learned, lessons or the documenting lessons learned, because team members perceive it's not important. It's time consuming. And you might have experienced such situation in your day-to-day work where due to time pressure, due to deadlines, team members do not spend time on such activities because they are so much into work. So for that reason, project manager has to coach team members, tell them like how important it is. So correct answer is option C. All other options are irrelevant. Let's read the explanation. All right, let's move to the next question. All right, Anton, you have chosen option A.
I believe, Amar, that's what you shared on LinkedIn page. So I picked up A only because of that.
Because most of the people chose A, that's why?
Yeah, I may be wrong though. So maybe those people make
Okay.
mistakes as well.
Okay. If you read the question, what's the problem in this question, by the way? Just identify the problem here. Anyone, please. What's the problem in this statement? What's the issue?
Competition.
Competition, right. Okay, wait. Competition is the problem. Team members, there is a strong sense of competition among themselves. So when there is a competition, nobody would be sharing their learning with others because they see it as a competitor, right? These are normal team dynamics, right? When you work as a team member for promotions, for rewards, for other stuff, you keep your things to yourself because you see it as a competition. Okay. Now, what PM should do? That is the question. So option A, implement a team-based incentive program that rewards the entire team for exceeding project goals. So why should I contribute if the reward would go to the entire team? So option A does not address the competition part. You understand? If it is a competition, why should I contribute if the reward is going for the entire team? So option A is not correct. Okay, let's move to the next option. Mudit, you have chosen option B.
I feel because of there is competition and also there is no open communication. When there is more camaraderie and when there is more friendship and a bond between the team, then this competition will not be a big issue for them. And this is a platform for them to bond. If they meet more and have a collective vision, then they will be able to work together without competing with each other. So that's what my thought was.
Okay, right. Thank you. All right, somebody with option C. No one. Okay. Amanullah, you have chosen option D.
Yes, looking into the question, how can the project manager most effectively foster a culture of knowledge sharing? Since it talks about the culture of knowledge sharing, in here, I thought that facilitating team meetings with rotating knowledge champions role for the individuals within the team will lead to good discussions and experience sharing. And I believe this would be a good way to give the turn to each individual within the team so that they lead those discussions and share their knowledge as well.
All right. So, Mary, do you think like this would solve the problem? What Amanullah has mentioned?
Well, option B and D are, I don't think it will solve so much problem because it's rotating knowledge champion role responsible for leading this. I think that option B is more where collective vision is there, so they're working together, and then there is a recognition for individual efforts, like but there is still collectiveness, like it's much more option D, it's much more for individual things without building a team.
All right, thank you. Mohan, do you think like what Amanullah has mentioned would address the problem?
I mean, it doesn't address the issue in this context, right? What the question is asking, where there's no trust and there's this competition. There is the fact that what D does is essentially, broadcast as to what the knowledge is and who's accountable for which knowledge and what they're doing or contributing to that. But that's about it. There's no transfer or exchange of knowledge between the team members, and there's no trust aspect of it. I mean, I picked B because it kind of taking a step back and cultivating, just the trust and the bond between the team members and having that collective vision. Basically, is the aspect where you can actually build trust in the team and transparency in this. Then there's that equal knowledge sharing across the team members.
All right. Absolutely. So option D does not address the problem. Problem is competition. We are again asking somebody, okay, now you are the champion, you share the result or the lessons learned. Why somebody should share the lessons learned when they see it as a competition? Correct answer is option B. What we need to do is we should lower the competition to have a sense of collective vision as a team. And at the same time, we should recognize or reward individual efforts for sharing knowledge or lessons learned. Option B is the right answer. Let's read the explanation. All right, I hope it is clear. So I was of the opinion like today's questions or session would be relatively much easier as compared to the previous one, because for me the difficulty level was relatively lower. I don't know how did you perform. So anyone who score is 10 out of 10, 9, 8, what's your score in today's session? Anyone with 7? Okay, good. With 6? All right, so the questions are relatively easier and simpler, but if I compare it with the real exam, you'll see somewhat similar question in the exam, okay? So please go through the content. I'm emphasizing it again and again. I can't do it more. Go through the content, solve mock exam if you really want to pass the exam. Follow this strategy, you will be passing this. There were some students, I was not sure they would be able to pass the exam, but they followed the process and they passed exam. A student recently, she passed exam, and trust me, I was of the opinion like she won't be able to pass the exam because of lack of conceptual clarity, but she followed the process and she passed, right? So please follow the process. I hope that would really help. All right, thank you so much. Take good care of yourself. See you on Wednesday with an interesting lesson.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Omar.
Thank you, Amir.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.